Percy Jackson books are near and dear to my heart, which is why I shock people when I tell them that I actually enjoy the two Percy Jackson movies. The first more so than the second, because I know the story is completely unfaithful to the source material, but I truly enjoy it for the talented actors and actresses who brought their A game, and I want to see those same actors return to have cameos in the television series. It's fine if you disagree with me. I'm open to hearing others' opinions on these films and books, but the books are so much better than the two films alone because they truly delve into how children with ADHD or dyslexia feel less significant than their peers and how they struggle to work twice as hard to achieve what other classmates without their conditions achieve. I myself have ADD and Asperger's syndrome, two things I've struggled with for most of my life, and when I read the Percy Jackson and the Olympians books recently as an adult, I discovered a newfound appreciation for this world that I first thought was weirdly structured, confusing, and completely off the wall in comparison to something like Harry Potter. And keep in mind, I tried reading these books as a 12-year-old after watching the Lightning Thief movie, and the Lightning Thief movie made some of those weird, confusing scenes more tangible, like Mrs. Dodds turning into the Fury. Because, of course, it's going to be weird, it's going to be quirky, and it's going to have a lot of elements that don't make sense at first because it's looking at ancient Greek mythology in modern day. It's going to be absurd and ridiculous, and that's what it's supposed to be. But after reading the first book twice and going through the entire series twice, it's safe to say that Rick Riordan's works are by far some of my favorite fictional works I've ever read, right up there with Harry Potter or any other comic book I'm fond of. So today, I decided I'm going to rank all 5 Percy Jackson and the Olympians books and all 5 of the Heroes of Olympus books from my least favorite all the way to my most favorite. And this is tough, because I love all of them, and I don't want to rank them this way. Some of them are even going to tie in various spots as my most favorite, because I can't pick and choose. Now, keep in mind that the Trials of Apollo won't be included here, because I'm still stuck on the 4th book right now, but I might make a separate video ranking those as well. And keep in mind, this is an opinion piece. It's fine if you disagree with me here, but please try keeping the comments as positive as possible. Without further ado, enjoy my ranking of Percy Jackson and the Olympians and Heroes of Olympus. Now, I'm going to start right off the bat with my least favorite book in the series of Heroes of Olympus, The Son of Neptune. This might come off as a shock to some, but in my opinion, the pacing of this story was slow and boring at times. It felt like the pacing of the first book, where the action begins immediately, but it feels mixed up and confusing. Granted, because it's told in Percy's point of view with his amnesia implanted by Hera. The chase scene with the Gorgons was cool, but then he's thrown into the realm of Camp Jupiter, which is practically a military camp instead of the peaceful, fun-loving Camp Half-Blood. I know Rick was trying to show how distinct the Greeks and Romans were, but the problem with the descriptions of Camp Jupiter, it lists the various rankings of the ancient Roman army, which can read as confusing because there's so much detail slapping you in the face that you don't know how to process it. I know it's supposed to feel like Percy's ADHD going off the wall with him being confused about his environment, but I feel that this was done far better in The Lightning Thief, where it was condensed down to 1 chapter, gave us a little bit of a break, and then moved back into the action, whereas in The Son of Neptune, the confusion and the strangeness just doesn't stop in the beginning, and Hazel's flashbacks, as tragic and heartbreaking and beautiful as they are, do not help with curing my confusion. And I didn't love at first how Camp Jupiter felt so militaristic. It almost felt wrong for me to see these young kids training like they're in the Navy. I just wanted to get back to Camp Half-Blood, the summer camp I'd want to go to if I were a demigod, where kids play capture the flag, do arts and crafts, rock climbing, and campfire sing-alongs, all the normal summer camp activities, not this version of a military academy where kids are hardened and not allowed to be kids, and they practically run the whole camp by themselves. Next on my list is The Sea of Monsters. This one is neither spectacular nor horrible. It's just okay, in my opinion. It's far less confusing than the first book in this series, because once you get through The Lightning Thief, you're familiar with this world, and you grew to love Camp Half-Blood. You're introduced to Percy's little brother Tyson, who is a Cyclops. You learn that Luke poisoned Talia's tree, and Percy and Annabeth go off on their quest into the Bermuda Triangle. You learn that Clarice struggles with pleasing her father Ares because Ares values his sons more than his daughters. The story gives us many great moments of Percy and Annabeth's friendship, and it shows Annabeth's cleverness. I don't have too many issues with the story itself, so why is it towards the bottom of my list? Because while it is a standout, it just didn't feel too memorable. Even though it has its moments, it just doesn't wow me. That's why the next one on my list edges it out, because Sea of Monsters isn't as bam in your face as some of the others are. The next one on my list is Percy Jackson and the Olympians, The Lightning Thief. Like I said earlier, this book's pacing and detail was what slowed me down as a 12-year-old and made it hard for me to get into it. The battle with the Fury happening so quickly, the sword once more becoming a pen, and Mr. Brunner acting so oblivious to Mrs. Dodds were just those little things that confused me as a kid. I didn't know what to think. I was left just as confused as Percy. Sure, as an adult, I can understand it a little better, but even so, the battle with the Chimera on the St. Louis Archway was just beyond weird. And when I compare this with the battle in the Parthenon that took place in the film version, I actually think I prefer the film version's monster better. If the Hydra from the film was mashed with the St. Louis Arch from the book, the high stakes would still be there, and it would be far less weird and confusing for the reader to comprehend, because the monster is more straightforward and easily able to be identified, because we all know what a Hydra looks like. We all know what it is, or at least we should, and the demigod dreams always threw me for a loop when I'd try reading this at age 12. But as I got further into the series, I realized how essential these dreams are for Percy. Sure, I like the book, but the weirdness that took place in it was what took me out of the story as a kid. I could barely process what I was reading, and it made it difficult for me to understand back then. At least now, as an adult, I can comprehend it, but for young kids, it might not be that easy. Now, let's move into the next one, The House of Hades. This book is absolutely incredible and one of my top favorites in the series. We get to have a view of Tartarus for the first time, and the way it's described is beyond terrifying and so beautiful at the same time. Piper gets a moment to shine. Nico is given an emotional coming out scene to Jason in front of Cupid. Leo has a moment with the dwarves in Bologna where he trades off with them and outsmarts them. Hazel and Piper grow to be more powerful. Annabeth and Percy have so many romantic moments where they need to lean on each other for survival. It practically ties with the Mark of Athena as my top favorite in the Heroes of Olympus. But after I read the book a second time, I realized there was a whole moment where the pacing just completely slowed down, and I'm not sure it did the book much service. It's where Leo goes to Ogygia, Calypso's island. This whole moment of Leo with Calypso easily could have been condensed into one chapter at least, like Percy's in the Battle of the Labyrinth. I really wish that Rick cut and condensed these 3 chapters into one, because we already saw Calypso's island before, and it's not really a place I want to see again. after having already been introduced to it in the 4th Percy Jackson book. It feels like a repetition that wasn't all that successful. Leo's time on Ogygia read as slow and at times very boring and took away from my enjoyment of the story. Leo's arc with Calypso was just too dragged out for my taste. Not only that, the opening chapters for Hazel's character, meaning Hecate, easily could have been condensed down as well. I know several of the chapters are shorter than others here, but I would have found a way personally to condense Hazel's opening moments into 2 parts, not 3. Same thing with Frank's time in Venice, where he receives Mars's blessing. I would have condensed that down as well, and it would have had the same effect. But again, that's just my opinion. I do not think the book is bad at all. It's beautiful and sweet. You can just visualize everything before your eyes. And when Percy and Annabeth finally reunite with their friends, it's an emotional payoff that hits you hard. It just needed to be condensed down. I would have ranked it a little higher if it hadn't been for some of these pacing issues, which just hurt it a little bit, just a little bit. The next book ranking on my list is The Battle of the Labyrinth. This one has so much mystery, so much action, and really puts our characters' wits to the test. It feels like the maze in Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. It's a test for Annabeth as she struggles to go through this huge maze, and she struggles with not only her developing feelings for our seaweed brain, Percy, but Luke as well, who is many years older than her and manipulated and abused her so much in the Titan's Curse. Annabeth is shown to be the most conflicted, coping with the mental abuse that Luke had put her through when he held her hostage during the Christmas holidays, and struggling to reconcile the fact that she wishes to save him from himself, putting her at odds with Percy, who thinks she cares more about Luke than she does about him. But this also tears Percy up as he struggles to reconcile his feelings for Rachel Elizabeth Dare, who becomes their guide in the story. This is also the book where Percy struggles with this thought of wishing to make his father, Poseidon, proud of him, especially as his 14th birthday approaches. He's forced to battle one of his evil half-siblings who has a line of skulls dedicated for all the people he killed in the name of his father Poseidon. But Poseidon assures Percy by the end of the book that his son has done far more heroics in his name, therefore making Percy his most favorite son. We also see Nico D'Angelo struggling to reconcile with Percy as he blames Percy for the death of his older sister. Next up on the list is The Lost Hero. This is one that pulls Percy from the story entirely, and we are introduced to Talia Grace's little brother, Jason, and 2 new characters named Piper and Leo. I know there are many who claim that they like this book the least, but in my opinion, it's one of the best in the Heroes of Olympus series. We learn more about Talia's past. Piper and Leo bring in more diversity to the various characters, Piper being half Cherokee and Leo being half Mexican American. It opens up in a similar way as The Son of Neptune, but the confusion due to Jason's amnesia isn't nearly as intolerable as Percy's confusion in The Son of Neptune. And the moment where Jason finally remembers his past and who he is, he has a moment that is beyond badass as he fights the anti-Zeus. Piper is branded as Aphrodite's favorite daughter when Aphrodite tells her that in order to be perfect, you need to feel perfect about yourself and avoid being something you're not. Leo learns that even if something breaks, it can be repurposed once more, and each of the 3 characters gets what they want in the end, at least in this book. It gives us a whole new perspective, shifting from the first-person point of view to the third-person point of view, telling the story for the first time from multiple characters. It was very well crafted, and in my opinion, that's what makes this book far more successful than The Son of Neptune, because it introduces us to the Roman deities and grants us a whole new perspective. Next on the list is towards the very top, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, the last Olympian. This is the one that brings forth the prophecy of the seven at the end of the story. Annabeth and Percy fully realize their feelings for one another. Luke and Selena and Charles Beckendorf sacrifice their lives for the greater good and die heroes. Selena's death is the metaphor for one dying of a broken heart, because Luke manipulated and blackmailed her into being his spy, and she did this all in the name of love for her boyfriend, Charles Beckendorf, who willingly got himself blown up to save Percy. And every single moment for me leaves me so satisfied. It's the book where we see Percy and Poseidon truly have that relationship as a father and a son for the first time. And when Poseidon hugs his child after the battle is over, it's absolutely touching. We begin pitying Luke when we see that his mother had been driven into madness due to her trying to become the next Oracle, thinking she had the gift of prophecy due to her being clear-sighted. Rachel Elizabeth Dare is revealed to be the true Oracle, and the battle is beyond intense, with the kids desperately trying to hold down the fort and save the city of Manhattan. It's a book that leaves you satisfied from beginning to end, and for me, it's close to perfection. And Luke's sacrifice is what made me reconcile with his character and realize that he is one of my top favorite characters to ever appear in the books. And that's Percy and Annabeth Underwater Kiss, easily the most romantic piece of writing I ever read. Give me a break. It makes me wish we got that moment between Alexandra Daddario and Logan Lerman's Percy and Annabeth. And now, ranking in second place is The Blood of Olympus. The battle here in this book felt even more satisfying than The Last Olympian, in my opinion. The Blood of Olympus doesn't have Percy or Annabeth's point of view, which is my one gripe, but the pacing of the story is great, and it gives us Nico and Rena's point of view for the first time. It also shows how Percy and Jason's friendship has evolved into a full-on bromance, showing how close the two have become. And Piper and Annabeth's friendship is shown beautifully when they battle the anti-Hephaestus with help of Piper's half-brothers, who are the gods of fear and panic. And Jason saving Percy's life brings forth a whole new level of respect that I have for his character, and this makes Jason's sacrifice in Trials of Apollo, the Burning Maze, that much more heartbreaking, because he was constantly putting his neck on the line to save everyone that he loved and cared about. And in the battle where Jason meets his father Zeus for the first time, it feels emotional, and you can see how Zeus has grown to possibly become a more loving father, where their eyes meet and Jason tries his hardest not to get too emotional. And the final battle against Gaia, ending with Jason, Leo, and Piper, is beyond satisfying to read. All three of them grew to be so much more powerful than when they started off, and fully changed from where they were in The Lost Hero. They started it and ended it, and it's absolutely perfect. Even Rena and Nico are shown to have changed, and it hints at Nico's romance with Will Solis, a son of Apollo. And The Blood of Olympus just did more of what The Last Olympian couldn't do. That's why it's so high up for me. And finally, it's a tie at number 1 with The Titan's Curse and The Mark of Athena. Why do these two tie, might you ask? Because they're both equally amazing and easily my top favorites. The third book is always my favorite in the series. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, Twilight Eclipse, Mark of Athena, The Burning Maze, and The Titan's Curse all have one thing in common. They're the third in the series, the moment where there's that turning point, and the payoff in the end is truly something to behold. In The Titan's Curse, you see Talia Grace is back, and Nico D'Angelo and his sister Bianca are introduced, along with Artemis and her hunters. In The Mark of Athena, Percy and Annabeth are reunited in the most beautiful, romantic, and hilarious way, where they run into each other's arms and kiss passionately in front of all of New Rome, only for Annabeth to judo flip him and demand he never, ever scare her like that again. And Percy has the nerve to laugh, telling her that he missed her. In Tynan's Curse, Percy has no choice but to be strong when Annabeth is taken out of the equation, only appearing in his dreams as he watches Luke hold her hostage and psychologically manipulate and abuse her, and he can do nothing but just watch it unfold as he sleeps at night. You see how much this torments Percy, knowing that his best friend, the girl he's truly growing to love and care for as more than a friend, is suffering, and there's nothing he can do to help her. It's absolutely gut-wrenching, and his overwhelming love for Annabeth leads to him sneaking off on the quest with Talia, Grover, and Zoe Nightshade. And it's on this quest that he learns why Zoe, Artemis's lieutenant, is so bitter towards male heroes. Hercules' sword was created by her, which also happens to be Percy's sword, Riptide, and her father is Atlas, the Titan who was cursed to hold up the weight of the sky on his shoulders. And it's through Percy's actions that he makes Artemis realize that not all men are awful, because he willingly went out of his way to rescue not just Annabeth, but her as well. He learns that Talia still has romantic feelings for Luke, and she's still willing to try saving him even though he's far gone. And Bianca's heroic sacrifice forever changes the friendship between Nico and Percy, with Nico outright saying he hates Percy, when, as the reader, you later learn in the House of Hades that this is because Nico is struggling with his homosexuality at just the tender age of 10 years old. The poor little guy is suffering internally and making himself sick, while frustrated with the fact that Percy is the very thing he wants, but he can't have. And in the Mark of Athena, we see Annabeth having no choice but to be strong as she goes off to try finding the Athena Parthenos, which is being held by her mother's worst enemy, Arachne. And Percy struggles with the fact that he cannot help her, that she must do it alone, and this strengthens their romantic connection even further. There are also great moments of comedy, such as Coach Hedge learning Annabeth and Percy fell asleep in the stables together, and Percy and Frank being held hostage, and Forces's aquarium of captive sea monsters. Frank turning into a giant koi fish still makes me laugh out loud. And Coach Hedge, our favorite old school conservative gun-toting all-American patriotic Chuck Norris wannabe, brings the funny every time. And don't even get me started on Percy being all offended and hurt like a petty 5-year-old over Chiron's brothers not wanting to meet him. I can't read that with a straight face. Leo is given so much development here as well, almost as much as Hazel, when he learns that Hazel had dated his great-grandfather back in the 1940s, because she's truly a girl out of time. And we see how he feels like the seventh wheel, the most useless member of the crew and the most unappreciated. And the Colosseum fight with Bacchus just sitting back watching as Percy and Jason battle Ephialtes and Otis makes Percy slowly realize why Luke hated the gods so much. Because for years, he's been the gods' idea of entertainment and a sick joke on their part. And this book ends in one of the most tragic ways possible, with Annabeth and Percy falling into the pits of Tartarus, hell itself, holding hands, and Percy begging Nico to meet them at the doors of death. Both the Mark of Athena and the Tynan's Curse show this bond between Annabeth and Percy, and how this is the catalyst for the books that follow. They're both absolutely beautiful, and I cannot pick between these two to put in the #1 spot. Thank you so much for watching the video. If you happen to be brand new here, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss out on any of my future content. Also, be sure to check out my social media links, which I will be linking down below. That includes my public Instagram, where you will see me frequently updating about my YouTube channel, posting behind the scenes stuff, and also posting my updated headshot pictures on there as well. God bless, happy viewing, and have a nice day.